Welcome to Faith in Media podcast. I'm so delighted to be joined today for another podcast and episode with Esther Higham. Esther, welcome to Faith in Media. How are you today?
I'm good, actually. Friday's my day off, so I don't get up early, and then I use it as a day to mop up and do all the things that have been outstanding during the week. So yeah,
I love that. It sounds like you're actually living the dream of the 4-day week that I think many people are trying to vie
I do
towards.
still work on a Friday. I just don't do the breakfast show, so it means I don't have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's enough.
Amazing. It's so lovely to have you, and I think it's always really helpful when we get our guests to do a bit of an introduction of who they are, what you do, and just a little bit of an insight as to who Esther is. That would be lovely if you can.
I know, but it's a really hard question to answer, actually, isn't it? But so my day job is that I present the breakfast show on Premier Christian Radio 4 days a week, and also part of the team, producing that as well. The other part of my life is my husband and I run a creative consultancy. We both started off in TV, then we spent 15 years making films for businesses and organisations, and now we're doing more of a consultancy type thing, helping companies make sure that everything is hanging around their vision. And then on top of that, we're both involved with setting up, I suppose you'd call it a missional community, but we call it Mojo, the Ministers of Jesus out there, and it's helping Christians get confident in living out what Jesus calls us to do in everyday life. So beyond the borders of the church, whether that's pubs, prisons, streets, just in our friendship groups. So that's quite an embryonic thing that's emerging in our lives. And I'm a wife and a mum to 2 teenagers as well.
2 teenagers, bravery. This is a whole new world, I think, having teenagers in this era.
Don't be afraid of teenagers. They are really fun to be around. They bring all the new music and ideas into the house. I'm loving being mum of teenagers, actually.
Amazing. It's so good to hear that. And what a wonderful breadth of experience that you have, and exciting to hear that actually, even though you have so much experience and so much background within media, within film, production, radio, that actually there's still amazing things emerging, which I really love to hear from our guests. But I'd love to go back to a little bit of the beginning, if that's okay with you. Now, you started working in radio, I believe, as a teenager, if my research is correct. Which is such a formative time. What drew you to radio at such a young age? And what was that experience like so early on?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I mean, I was that kid that was always doing like little radio plays with a tape recorder, and me and my sister both loved magazines. We used to, make our own little magazines with beauty tips and what have you. So it's I think I always loved that sort of, I suppose, communication. But I really got switched onto radio when I was 17, and I managed to get, just through friends of friends, it was a school friend's dad worked at Radio 1, so I had a week's work experience at Newsbeat, and it completely switched me on to the whole thing of I suppose particularly at that time, maybe news in particular, but just being in the studios, watching things go out live, learning how to edit on the old-fashioned tape machines. You're probably too young, Carla, to remember that.
No. Tape machines are still my era.
Yay. So I got the bug then, and I thought, this is what I really want to do. But it has been quite a circuitous route. I don't know how much detail you want on that, but
I'd love to hear whatever you're willing to share. That would be amazing, because it is it's a fascinating one, especially like you've mentioned, like the cassette tape era to what we've got now with this very high frequency, high speed digital era. But the passion for radio, I don't think if you love it, you love it. And so to have someone who's been in this world for so long and been such a kind of like a front row viewer of its involvement over time, it's great to hear what that experience has been like for you.
Yeah. So after that, then I did quite a lot of work experience at local radio stations. I chose the university I wanted to go to, looked at ones that had radio stations. So I went to Hull University, partly because of radio, partly because of the House Martins. This was the late 80s, early 90s, and got involved there. And then the funny thing was, having been so sort of committed and kind of focused on, right, I'm going to do university, I'm going to go and do the BBC local radio reporter scheme, which was the sort of one of the main routes in at that time. And then I suddenly got this feeling in my last year of university that wasn't what to do. And I was like, oh, but this is what I'm going to do. This is my plan. And I felt God calling me to go back to my hometown and help with a community project that my parents had been setting up. So I didn't apply for the BBC. I came back home and ended up running a kind of community cafe in a small little town in Kent for 3 years, which I loved. It was actually an amazing place to sort of make stuff happen and be in the community. And I still did some work at BBC Radio Kent and Radio Mercury, which was the kind of commercial station at the time. But I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then after about 3 years, the bug sort of got me again. I went traveling for a little bit, did the old backpacking around South America. And when I came back, I was like, right, this is the time. But then rather than going to radio, I ended up going to television instead. I ended up doing some work experience at various places at BBC, and then getting my sort of other dream, which was a job at Children's BBC. So I ended up working behind the scenes on CBBC On Air, which was kind of the glorified broom cupboard. That was the era of Angelica Bell and Michael Underwood, Dick and Dom, Simon Thomas and Katie Hill on Blue Peter, S Club 7, S Club Juniors, Westlife, kind of.
My goodness, this is my childhood, literally encapsulated. I love it. There we
go, yeah. And I absolutely loved it. Loved it. It was very fun, very high pressure, live, basically doing a live show every single day, getting celebrities to dress up as fluffy chickens, or, trying to tame Dick and Dom. Not possible, basically. And I just learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. So TV was the world for a while. And then I met my husband, who was a documentary maker. He was making documentaries for Channel 4. And his very brilliant chat up line was, I'm setting up a production company. Do you want to come to a meeting at my house?
Clearly, she's not left the meeting, everyone. I love that.
Yeah, I've not left the meeting. Yeah, it's been a 22-year meeting. And so there I ended up working with him making documentaries for a little while. And so actually, I didn't come back to radio till about 12 years ago, when a sort of chance meeting with Peter Kerridge, and he said, have you ever done radio? I was like, yes, I have, actually. And then I ended up doing some stints co-presenting Breakfast with John Pantry. I did a couple of stints doing that. The kids were really tiny at the time, and I just couldn't get up to London every single morning. So I took a break on that. And then 4 years ago, during COVID, John Pantry retired, hung up his microphone after 26 years. Wow. And Charmaine at Premier said, do you fancy taking on the breakfast show? And I was like, yes, I would. So that's a whistle-stop tour.
Yeah, I love that tour. That was incredible. I love that. And down the memory lane of Esther Higham. How fascinating.
I'm quite nostalgic.
And this is what I love about doing these conversations. People, I don't think, have the opportunity to really take the time to think about these memories until someone asks them or puts them in the position to do so. So I love that. And I love how it makes you feel, because the glee that came through your eyes, if you're not watching and you're listening to this interview, I'm telling you, it's there. It's wonderful to see. And then people just appreciate, like, gosh, I've really come a long way. And I think that leans in quite well to my next question. What have been some of those standout moments? If we go back to the radio time when you started there, some of those standout moments from your time in radio that kind of still impact you even today.
Oh, Lord. I'm going to need a moment. Stand out in what sort of regard? Just like fun times or difficult times?
Things like, this happened one day at the studio and I will never forget it. Or this was a really groundbreaking conversation that I remember some of the things from it.
Oh, I should have prepared this.
Maybe this is too many.
I mean, the funny thing is, you sort of remember the embarrassing moments, don't you, or the bad moments? So I do remember. I also did some work in the last sort of 10 years or so. I did quite a few stints at BBC Radio Kent, and I was trying to get, I did get a few stand-in presenting gigs, but I was quite often working with the news team. And there was one morning. So I often did the reactive reporter slot. So basically, you turn up at 5. Most of the show is already planned, but there's 2 slots for what's the news of the day. So your first job in the morning is who do I know who will be looking at their phone at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was I can't remember what was the story. Yes, I can. Um, the chairman of, was it Leicester Football Club? I think
Wow.
had died in a helicopter crash. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
that.
goodness.
And they were doing it was his funeral, I think. BBC Radio Leicester were doing a big thing on it, and we just wanted to reflect that as well. And so we'd been trying to book various guests. This is really bad. This is a learning. If you're a young researcher working in radio or TV, listen well, because this is the morality tale. So I'm looking through the list of guests that they've got, and one of them is Mark Bright, who used to play for Leicester City and is now a pundit, and his mobile number was there, and I sent him a text, would you be happy to come on at 7:15? Yeah, no problem, happy to talk about it, blah, blah, blah. So I put it in the queue, goes live, and I'm delighted to say that football player and pundit Mark Bright is here. Welcome, Mark. What are your memories of this guy? And he goes, well, I'm not that Mark Bright. And that sinking feeling, you're like,
oh no,
oh, this is live on radio, I've got the wrong person. And it turns out this guy was involved with Leicester City football, but not as a player. And I was
goodness.
like, do you not think if your name was the same as a celebrity and you were involved with the same football club, you would tell the young researcher who's just called you at 6 o'clock in the morning that you're not that Mark Bright? You wouldn't wait until you were live on air. But it was my fault. And,
Oh my
the
gosh.
lesson is always check your guests, always check your facts.
Yeah. Love
why
that
does that one
so
spring to
much. That
mind?
it's definitely one to go down in the archives. I would remember that so much too.
I'm not sure I got asked to do that shift again after that.
Oh no. I love, but I think these are such crucial moments. This is where we became what we become, really, isn't it? Learning that lesson the hard way. Also, you can look back and laugh at such a crucial moment. Look, it hasn't left us today, and it's many years later, which I love. So that is so exciting. What about when you
also, these things happen. Everyone makes mistakes, and at the end of the day, you don't, you have to own it and move on.
And I think that's really good, because I was going to kind of talk a little bit how you transitioned into television. And I imagine, like you mentioned, that was a mistake moment. It's funny, we can laugh about it now, but a lot of the time I think we live in a world that's really setting high standards about, we think we're supposed to be perfect, but we don't become great until we make these failures or these little kind of segue moments within the pathway. It's not that lovely straight line, simple trajectory. It's this zigzag line of really great days and some really low moments. How have you found transitioning between radio and then television and filmmaking? That can't have all just been quite straightforward. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the transition I didn't find difficult, because I was, it's the same skills. I think basically production skills are the same skills as project management skills. They're the same as party giving skills. A lot of producers give really good parties because you know how to get everyone, in the room at the same time.
Great.
That's the other thing I love doing. So skills wise, culture wise, I didn't really find that a problem. I mean, the hardest thing, I think, was, so when I met my husband and we started working together making documentaries, he had just become a Christian at the age of 35, having not at all been involved. And he'd had a very dramatic coming to faith and was very excited about all he was suddenly seeing in the kingdom. And so he and two friends started a company called Cornerstone Films. And the idea was, to tell stories of the kingdom, but in ways that would be palatable for, a Channel 4 audience. And he was, well thought of. They had done some award-winning documentaries for them. So, we had an in there. But my gosh, it is difficult. It was difficult then. I don't know what it's like now, trying to sell those stories into, a mainstream broadcaster. One guy sort of said to us, we had this incredible story. We did make a film about it in the end. Incredible story of heroin addicts coming off drugs in Russia, sort of basically through prayer and discipline and brotherhood, a sort of a mafia-style brotherhood coming around them. Incredible stories. And one commissioning editor sort of saying, well, if they had to do something, if they had to drink black liquid or, sleep naked in the woods, that would be much more interesting. The fact that they come off through prayer and love, it's not visual enough. It's not believable enough. It's kind of, so it was really difficult to get those stories away. We did one, probably our favourite one was with 24/7 Prayer when they first went out to Ibiza. because that was great. You had girls in bikinis talking about Jesus. That's a done deal. So I think after sort of 2-3 years of continually having meetings, continually trying to sell stories, and and getting a few away, but really not enough to make not to make a living off. Or so that was discouraging. That was difficult. And I think the landscape's changed so much now. You can just go and make a doc about any story you like, and you can find an audience for it. I think the way that the playing field has leveled and access has leveled for telling these stories is just really exciting and incredible. But 20 years ago, it's quite a different story.
I love that you say that. And I think that's something really important that we should probably be more appreciative now. I know we think the wide accessibility of media and kind of just content everywhere has made people a little bit more wary, because obviously that doesn't always allow for safeguarding or infiltrating sometimes the good stuff or the truth always in media. But actually, if we think about what opportunity in reverse has now been made available to those who are, genuine about the craft and would love to, find a way to actually have their stuff seen or visible, you can create publication spaces so easily anywhere. Like YouTube is available as a channel. You just need a couple of subscribers and you're good to go. And you could have a following so easy. I think you're so right in terms of we've come a long way where it was very exclusive, a very narrow pathway to get there. And you had to hope and pray that you had an in somehow. But lovely to hear that you already had, and to know that there were two believers really still trying to push a kingdom agenda. Back then, when maybe it wasn't as popular and not as free to do so, you were still doing that. How did you find working with your husband?
I really love working with my husband. He's
awesome.
Amazing. He's one of the most talented people I've ever met. So that's a joy. I think we've probably learned quite a lot from each other. He's the best interviewer I've ever seen. I mean, and it's a bit ironic that I do 5 interviews before he's even started work in the morning. He would be really good to get on this podcast, actually, because he's got an incredible
very
story
open.
as well.
I would love to talk to him too.
So we love that. We've got quite a sort of symbiotic working relationship, it's not like one of us is the creative, one of us is the practical one of us is the detail, one of us. I mean, he's very visionary. He's very very intuitive and prophetic, and I probably do get the job done, sort of thing. But we love working together. But I do actually love the fact that my radio stuff is kind of me, and then our other stuff is us. So it's nice to have your own thing in the midst of that.
There's just room for all of that, which I think is amazing, that you guys sound like you've established a good balance with that. And I love the fact that you spoke about you've been utilizing your faith in such a strong way throughout every single step of these journeys. I'd love to hear more about what that process and journey has been like for you as you've gone through different stages of different forms of media and different places of work and utilizing your creative skill. How has your faith grown in all of those chapters as well?
Ooh, wow. Has my faith grown, or how has it sort of woven in?
Developed. I'm happy for all of those variables.
I suppose. So I became a Christian when I was 6. So I really, and I can remember very clearly the moment that happened. I'd been away on my parents are Christians, are brought up in church from day dot. But remember going to a beach mission on the beach at Broadstairs, where probably that was maybe the first time I'd heard like the gospel actually kind of set out in steps, and you need to ask Jesus into your life. So I remember doing that when I got home in my little bedroom. And actually I look back now and I realized that was my first experience of the Holy Spirit, but we didn't really use that language in the church where I was growing up. So I didn't actually recognize that till a little bit later on. So it's all, Jesus has always been part of my life, and I've always been interested in the where mainstream culture and Jesus meets, So I think throughout my life, there's been that desire to kind of bring the two together or find those connection points. And, we try and do that on the show as well.
Yeah.
So and in a funny sort of way, I always felt called to mainstream media. So it's really interesting that God has me in a place that's a Christian media station. So, watch this space for that one. But I still think there's that sense of trying to make sure we bring in what's good from the mainstream world. What's the mainstream world talking about? How do we interpret? Coldplay brings out a song called "Let's Pray." What does that mean for us as Christians?
Wow.
Is there a way that we can then use that to talk to people about faith and help people engage with faith? What does it mean in the US election where, lots of Christians are voting for somebody that actually a lot of British Christians would have reservations around? What does that mean? How do we pray into that? So that for me is always the kind of interesting point. So I've loved it when I've had a chance to, with my other work, where we go into companies that aren't, they're not Christian companies.
Yeah.
You're just going to do the job. You want to do you want to do it well. You want to get to know people, but you want to bring something of the kingdom into that as well, whether that's just affirming people or, again, Jeremy, because he's so prophetic, he just is amazing at kind of just asking someone a question. They'll be like, where'd you get that from? So, again, there's opportunities to minister when you're there. And I suppose that for me is where I love to operate, is that kind of that little thin line between the kingdom and the mainstream world, and trying to bring
it sounds very exciting.
But also to bring, bring the world back into the church as well. So that's part of the answer, not the whole answer, I guess.
Love that. No, I really love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's really lovely to hear that you're comfortable in the tension of that, whereas I think others may be a little bit more reserved.
I love the tension of that. I get a bit bored when I'm in just. Not that I don't love my brothers and sisters in the faith. I do,
of course.
But I absolutely love it. I think that that tension is really, I suppose it's creative. It keeps me on my edge. I had a guy in working for us here, editor, young guy, locally in the town. We run a prayer project called Prayer Works. We put it up on Facebook a lot. We're going to be in this street this week. Come on, if you've got anything to pray for, come and find us. Anyway, this guy said, "Oh yeah, I've seen you on Facebook in your blue hoodies with your prayer thing. What's that about?" And I'm like, right, how do I describe to a 22-year-old guy who I don't think is a Christian, might have done school assemblies, how do I explain how we do that and what prayer is? And that,
I love
brings you on your edge, doesn't it? And I love that.
And I think how important perhaps that's an example that we should follow. And obviously I'm not saying everyone is going to be Esther's life, but what in terms of being comfortable, like there's got to be a way that we can walk the line, be secure in our faith, but are we connecting with the people? That's exactly what Jesus did. He didn't hang out exclusively with those of his own people, those of his own mindset at all. And he was constantly bringing the good news into places of need. And I think sometimes in this world, we either become a bit fear-mongered by the world is a very scary place and with good reason, but also knowing that our place is meant to be in the center, bringing light. And what does that look like for your everyday life? So I love that you share that, and I love that you're like, let's be in the tension, everyone. Let's go there together. Let's do that. I think that's so good. So, what does a typical day in the life of Esther look like when you're balancing work, family, and ministry? And it sounds like you just walk out the door, and it's potentially a salvation moment, and you're going to do an interview and a potential project.
There's a lot of juggling. There's a lot of juggling going on, but it seems to somehow hang together. So Monday to Thursday, I'm doing the show. By the joys of remote technology, it means I'm not always having to be in London. So I'm up, I'm looking at my scripts, I'm checking the news of the day, getting ready for the show. And then we're live between 7 and 9. And then I typically would tend to sort of have a quick debrief with Max and Ieni, the brilliant team on Inspirational Breakfast. I'll have a quick chat about the next day's show. But then I quite often switch hats and work with Jeremy and any editors we've got in making films or, client work there. Then I'll tend to come back and sort of check if there's stuff to write for the script or guests to book for later in the week. Then I do quite often have a nap at lunchtime.
This is so good. I love this life.
Yes, it's my tip for success. If I can, I can't always do it. And then, then we're sort of planning shoots and booking guests planning programs, booking guests, thinking of ideas. And then, Yeah, in a typical week. So we do this prayer works project on a Tuesday night, just going out and prayer walking the streets in my town, and also offering to come round and pray for people if they want to do that. It's only just started over the last couple of months, so it's kind of quite a new project. We also do a lot of music nights in our local pubs as well. So acoustic sing-along nights, they're quite fun. And some sort of what we call mojo mission trips. So we'll take people out of their hometowns somewhere where they don't know everybody, don't know what the vibe is. And so actually you can then be sort of practicing using your ministry gifts in a town that isn't your own. So we do not every weekend, once a month, we might do some of those as well. And then it's the juggle of the kids are, our son's just left school, just finished his A-levels, and our daughter's just started sixth form. So they're that little bit more independent, but spending time with them, hearing things from their world.
I love it.
Odd picking up a lift here and there. Jeremy and I have to have quite a lot of meetings. We have to have quite a lot of meetings, like diary meeting, right, mojo meeting, work meeting. And I remember when the kids were little, our son was probably about 4, and we were working a lot out of home at that point. And he came in with his notebook and he went, right, Daddy, I need to have a meeting. What are you doing on the 39th?
This is amazing. An organizer already. I think you trained them well. Very good. Very good indeed. It's been amazing to hear just the insight of just your very authentic everyday life, Esther. And it's just really inspiring. I know that we have a lot of young mentees part of the Christians in Media program. And what we want to do through this podcast is really highlight those that have gone a couple of steps ahead of them and seeing what their journey's like, to show them this is what's possible. And you've built such a stunning career, in my view, that spans over multiple industries, forms of media. What advice would you give to young people who are just starting out in the field or other creative fields?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so different now, isn't it? Because the access is so much easier. You know, when I was just starting out in the industry, it was all about getting work experience, because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody who worked in media. It was like, a complete blank canvas, apart from this one, school friend's dad. I don't think I ever actually met him, strangely enough, Mr. Woodhead. Thank you very much for starting me off, wherever you are. But that was the way in. You worked for free. If you were kind of, or you made your own film somehow by blagging a camera off someone. It's extraordinary to me that in 25 years, you can now make a film on one of these and upload
Absolutely.
it, and the creative potential of that is so amazing. But of course, everyone and their dog is doing it. So then how do you make yourself heard above that noise? So I suppose it's just get on and do it. There's never been a better time to just get on and do it. Whether you're an actor, a presenter, a writer, a director, a commercials nut, a podcaster, you can just do it. And then I suppose the challenge is how you get it out there and how you get it noticed. And I suppose it's just keep doing what you love and let yourself be led. If you're following Jesus in it, that's the thing. We can have a game plan. I'm not sure I've ever had a game plan, actually, but you can have an idea, but actually you've got to let God lead you through the twists and turns of it. And then looking back, I can see how all these things, kind of the dots join up, and I can look forward and I can't quite imagine where those dots will lead. So I suppose there is that, isn't there? The kind of, I love that scripture, many of the plans of a man's heart, but the Lord directs his steps, or woman's heart in our case. It's great to have a plan. It's great to have a dream. God puts these dreams in us, and we've got to listen to those, because those are the kind of fuel, that keep us going, to have that dream and that vision and that desire to do something. But then I think let God lead you on the journey. Be confident about asking for help and asking for ins and putting yourself out there. But at the end of the day, it's not all down to us and our own striving. Let God open those doors. That's
beautiful. Thank you so much. Such wonderful advice. I think real nuggets there. And you've spoken about, like I said, just the amazing story of your life so far, building just your career, and just it's been a good life, a rich life. What do you hope is kind of next for Esther?
What a fun question. Yeah. I mean, genuinely love what I'm doing. I really love the fact that I get to chat to incredible people every single
Mm.
day, ask impertinent questions sometimes, or, just, yeah. So I love doing the breakfast show, and I'm really happy doing that. I suppose there's part of me that would love to bring a bit more of that mainstream
Mm.
vibe, a bit of moonlighting for some mainstream stuff would be great. I keep wondering about podcasts, but everyone's doing a podcast, aren't they?
I mean, I will
Not quite
always
sure.
advocate for a
What I would like, my
podcast.
dream podcast, okay. My dream podcast would be at a really nice country pub, visiting different country pubs around the nation for a Sunday lunch, and then in each place you'd gather a completely eclectic mix of people, and it would be a sound man's nightmare because you'd have to mic everybody up whilst
Yes.
they're eating and clanking plates, but there would
Yes.
be this sense of like it's like the dream Sunday lunch, having amazing conversations about what's been happening in the world that week and what everyone's
Mm.
individual passions are. I would love to do something like that.
That sounds like such a great idea. I would absolutely support that. And I can imagine all the stories that would come out of those incredible
Yeah,
places. So that would be
can you
awesome.
imagine? It'd be great. That'd be fun. But what's next? Yeah, I suppose I don't know because I'm being led on the journey.
Love that.
That's a bit of a cop out, I know.
But you've shared quite a lot already, and I think it's amazing to hear just kind of where you've been, what's happening now, and just like your hope for the future is it's really contagious. It's been an absolute delight to have chatted with you, Esther. Thank you so much for being with us today on the Faith in Media podcast, learning about you, your journey, and the real encouragement that you have for people who are looking towards the direction and paths that you've already led, and learning from the stories and learning from the lessons you've also learned on your journey has been really, really amazing. So if you're listening to this conversation, make sure that you connect with Esther on The Breakfast Show, listen to her on Premier Radio and also on her LinkedIn. Esther, it's been such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Lovely to speak with you.
You've been listening to Faith in Media with Carla Adebekun. Make sure you catch our episodes and hit subscribe. Please share and leave us a comment. Christians in Media is a UK charity that supports, encourages and inspires Christians from across the ever-changing media landscape. Find out more at www.christiansinmedia.co.uk and connect with us via our socials.